I'm with WARP7. I'm with WARP7. I'm a part of the business team, and I'm here today with actually my mom, who is named Avril Helbig, and she writes grants for a living. That is her profession, and she's here to teach you a little bit about that. So before we start, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. So all these seminars will be recorded and all participants will be muted with their cameras off throughout the entire seminar. And questions shall be asked through the chat only, and you're going to send your questions to the person named Send Your Questions Here anytime you want. So just personally message them. They're a co-host, so you can do it privately. They're going to put your questions in a document, and I'm going to ask them for everyone else for my mom to hear. So the upcoming seminar dates, we actually have a bunch more. We're working with Wealthsimple Foundation, and we've partnered with them to do 5 seminars. This is the first of 5. We have one on November 17th, a week from now, and that's going to be a scholarship seminar. We have one on the 24th about sponsorships, one on the 8th of December, which is about budgeting, and another one on the 8th of December, which is about paying for post-secondary education. And those are all brought to you by Wealthsimple and us, WARP7. So now that I'm done with that, I'm going to pass this off to Avril Helbig, and she's going to present and give us a little bit of talking. And again, if you have any questions, please send them to the chat, send them to Send Questions Here.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Avril Helbig. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about me and what I do, and then I'm going to start loading information your way. I got to tell you, generally when I talk about grants, I can talk for hours and hours and hours. So please feel free to send me questions as I'm talking so I can address anything specific you want to know. My company is called Avril Helbig Consulting. I've been writing grants and doing grants for a variety of organizations for over 30 years. I started out as a musician and I have a degree in voice performance, and I slowly transitioned from doing that into business consulting, including grants, after running a record label and after having my own company, which produced international tours of artists for many years. So the reason that I went into grant writing and understanding that whole process was because I myself was doing projects that required support from government levels of government and foundations. And so in doing it for myself, I sort of began to become very good at it, and other people began to ask me about it. That was a long time ago, and things have changed a lot now. And there are a lot of opportunities for both young people and teams and organizations to take advantage of money that comes from both foundations, from sponsors, from different levels of government, including, everything from cities to provinces to the federal government, depending on what you're doing. And there are several ways to approach it and certain tricks that I want to tell you about. I know that at the robotics team, you already have access to some funding and you already probably have someone who's doing sponsorship for you. And there's a way in which grants and sponsorship overlap in terms of the values that you bring to the process when you write. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it means to write a grant, how you get them, who you go to, and then also I'll show you some examples of what it looks like from one of my client organizations when they put together a deck for a sponsor, or just to make you aware of who they are, their values as an organization, and what they need from support, whether it be grants or funding. So what are you doing when you're writing a grant? You're going to either your city or your province or your federal government, and you're saying, I need money to support what I'm doing. And when you do that, there are many ways to describe that. There's some standardized questions that you can you'll go through whenever you go through this process, and there's some standardized techniques that if you can internalize them, they're going to make it much easier for you to do over and over again. So let me just talk through that, and then I'll share some examples of grants that I pulled up for you guys on my screen. I want to tell you what you're going to face when you're writing a grant. Say you have a project to take your team to do a specific competition or to go somewhere. You're going to be required to put together several elements, and you as an organization should look at this on a element by element basis, and then put those assets together in a deck or in a presentation that everybody has access to, so you can update them over time as more and more opportunities come forward. First of all, I'm going to give you the 10 basic questions or so that you're going to face as an organization when you're looking for money. The first one is going to be, who are you? Where you come from. Provide a description of your organization. And your organization is going to describe itself based on a few key factors. Who are you means not only what you do, in your case, your team and the kind of things that it does, but it also means the composition of your group. It means who's in your team, who's in your organization, who leads your organization, who follows your organization. And by who, I mean how many. I mean, are you representative of any specific demographics that are, key to your team, or any specific region? So in other words, you are from Toronto, you are from a specific demographic, you have been founded and existed for a number of years, you have X amount of people in your organization, and then you have a mandate, a mission, and some values that you want to convey when you're describing your organization. So grant writing 101 would be, why don't you take a look at your website as a team, grab this information, put it into a document, and really make it as up to date and as proficient as it can be. So
we have a question quickly just about that.
Sure.
So as a team, we change over the years. Can we change who we are over the years as well?
It's important that you do, and it's important that you show the progression. So when you're describing yourselves, and describing yourselves is question number one that you're always going to get when it comes to looking for money. You have to say, we started here and we ended up here, and the way we got from here to there is we started with 5 people, now we're at 50. We started in 2010, now we're at 2020. We started doing 1 competition a year, now we do 10 competitions a year. So you're illustrating the kind of growth that's happened over the years since you were founded, and not only with your stats and metrics about who is part of you, but also with the number of things that you've done and the number of achievements that you've had. So I have to say, I took a look at the WARP7 website before I came on here, and I'm looking at it now, and it's got a ton of information. But let me just briefly read to you what your About Us says. And this is at your first page. We're a high school robotics team located in Toronto, Ontario. We participate in the first robotics competition, an annual engineering challenge with thousands of teams from all over the world. And then you have a mission and a mandate statement. We strive to encourage innovation, foster well-rounded students, and provide them with skills. So it's good information, but it doesn't differentiate you. So when any funder or sponsor is asking you who you are, what you have to answer is, this is who we are and how we're different from everybody else, right? So if I'm writing a grant for the organization that I'm going to show you, House. So House is one of my clients, and they're an entrepreneurship accelerator. How are they different from everybody else? Well, they're the first organization to do this. They are the only organization to do that. Your definition of yourself in terms of a description of who you are when you're looking at grants has to be, we do this better than anyone else. We do this differently from everybody else, and we've had these kind of successes. So when I look at you online and I see WARP7, I can't see immediately that we won X amount of competitions over the last 10 years. And that's hugely important. Your visual shows me a winning flag. I know you're a winner, I know from Sadie, but when I look at it, I have to have that actually right up front so that I understand who I'm talking to. Are you a leader within what it is that you do? If you are, then you need to show that as well. All of these things are really important when you're talking about defining yourself, because they set you up for being eligible for funding and being eligible for support in many ways by differentiating you from everybody else that's out there, and by describing you in a way that brings your individuality to the forefront. Robotics teams, I don't know how many teams there are across Canada, but I'm betting that there are a ton. And I think that the most important thing that you have to do is say, what it is that makes you different from everybody else. So what you might want to know about your team is not only who you are, but how you function financially. So the second thing about grants is they're always going to ask you how much money you need, what you need it for, and then what it is that you're going to do with it. So question one is description of your organization. All the metrics that go into who we are, where we're from, what we do differently from everybody else. Question two is, what's your project? What are you saying you need this money for? And a lot of times in grant writing and when you're approaching public funding sources, they don't want to hear, oh, we just need it because we need to stay alive. What they want to hear is, in 2022, we want to try something we've never tried before. And that could be, we want to try a new competition or do a new activity, but it could also be as simple as, hey, we want to bring more people into the team, or hey, we want to bring more women onto the team, or we would like to see our team mentor another team. So when it comes to grants and projects and describing and articulating what it is you want to do, the most important thing is to say, this is actually what we want to do in a way that we haven't done before, something that we are competent at, but we want to get better at, or something that we want to expand on, and how we're going to go about it. So you might say something like, there's an opportunity for our team to go to this specific area and do a project that we haven't done before. And we would like to address this opportunity. Then you're going to be asked, what kind of money do you need and where are you going to put it? And that's going to require a budget. The best thing to do in a budget is to just get together as a group, decide exactly what the costs are going to be, and then look them up. So say it is some kind of activity where you have to travel to a competition or something that you haven't done before, and that's your project that you want funded. Then you're going to say, all right, we need 10 people. We need 10 people at $500 per for travel costs and overnight costs. We need X amount of money to do our marketing for this event. And we need X amount of money for our project equipment and operations. And then we need to capture everything that we've done and report on how this project made a difference. So describing yourself, describing how you are in relationship to everybody else who does similar things to what you do, describing your project, even if it's just being a robotics team for one more year, it's how this year is going to make a difference to you and how it differentiates this year from other years of your history, or how it even commemorates something. You may have been around for 10 years at this point, and you need to acknowledge that, and you need to develop some kind of attention to that, either through your socials or through something else.
I just have a question really quickly from the chat. So 80% of our expenses are operations and we have no way to make revenue. This is the same every year. A project may only be 5% of our total budget. How do we communicate this?
So the project is never only 5% of your total budget, because if you frame a project well, you're incorporating your regular operations into that as well. So not only are you saying we need the money to go and do this trip that I'm talking about, or whatever we decide our project is, but we also need the money to manage that. We need the money to keep our team going while we expand to do that. And when you put the budget together, you put those building blocks of the money for your team to exist within that project itself. Because no project happens without an organization already functioning, and functioning takes costs. Does that make sense to you? I hope that makes sense. So granting is going to do that. And then the final part to granting is going to be, you know what, at the end, what did you achieve? And what were the outcomes? And that's going to look like this. It's going to look like, you know, we went and did this project. X many people left. X many people came to the project with us. Our organization was advantaged by this and that when we were at the project, meaning like we met these people we have never met. We won, we didn't win, whatever. But the most important thing you're going to do is describe the impact that you had in several ways. The first way you're going to describe the impact is on the operation of your organization. Did you win? Did you lose? How did it help you? How did it move you forward as a team? The second way is how many people saw you do this project? How many people were reached by it? How many people participated in it? And how many people, other people partnered with you to achieve the project? Then in addition to that, you're going to be asked to say what your long-term outcomes from the project are. And those are really interesting things to define as an organization. Did you go into a project thinking that you would get A and instead you got B? Did you absolutely achieve everything you want to achieve? And did that make you realize as an organization that you're actually projecting, you're setting your sights a little bit low and you need to set your sights a little bit higher in the future? Those kind of things. Anyway, I'm sorry, I talk way too much when it comes to grants. And I know you've been watching my face for a long time. I'm going to show you the kind of a package that a professional not-for-profit put together, in this case, House, so that you can see how that kind of thing is expressed visually with impact, but also extremely simply so that people can internalize it. Okay. Can I share my screen? Yeah. Okay. So here's a deck. Is it centered for you? Sadie, can you nod if it's centered? Yeah, okay. So this is House. House is looking for funding from government organizations. House also has an extreme web of sponsorship partners that they use to do many of their team projects as well. This is what they would present. You see how simple and clear it is. We came to the conclusion system was broken. We didn't want to complain. So this is a statement of values right up front. Remember when I was talking about your website and I was saying, you know what, how are you different from everybody else? This is what you need to do. Put a strong statement of what makes WARP7 different from everybody else at the front of your package that you put together when you're trying to access funding. Then this is about the identity piece that we're talking about. Who are you? What's your vision? Who are the founders in this case, and the most important people involved in the organization? What do they do and what are they hoping to do? So a vision, a mission, and a mandate. Specs is the word that they're using here when they're talking about the metrics and the gathering outcomes and providing a bit of operational information. So in other words, this is a bit of our history. This is a bit of what we've done. These are the numbers of what we so far achieved. And this is what we want to go forward with. Team, that's a description. And then there's specifics. And it's really important to put a human face on what you're doing, so that you can actually describe to people, well, when you personalize it, people want to see you as a human organization, and they want to talk to you as opposed to believing that you're inaccessible or whatever. And that it goes for the narrative of who you are as well. A story like this can show you easily what it is that the organization wants to do and why, and the tone of the organization in a way that just like writing can't. It's always important to give the context. Again, this is that piece that I was telling you about differentiating yourself from everybody else who's looking for funding too. What is it that you do, and where do you do it? Where do you sit, geographically? Where do you sit achievement wise? Where do you sit in terms of the context of your organization compared to everybody else? That's what all of this is. Here you go. This is an impact page. And this is actually when you're looking at private or organizations, not for everything from not-for-profits and charities all the way to private business. This is often how they'll express their impact when it comes to gathering those numbers around what they do. So the people that have been participants in any of their programs, the people who have applied, the statistics about how many females versus the overall population, age, attendees, and impressions, because social media has become such an important thing. And if you haven't done a campaign for WARP7, you should do one really soon. In this case, House is not only founded by a celebrity. The Weeknd is one of the founding members of House. It's a academic institution that was put together to train people in entrepreneurship, mostly in the creative industries. But even so, even though they're coming from a place of being really well known, they still ally themselves in their documentation with other people who are really important, including Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, and Jen Rubio, and many, many different celebrities within the creative industries that are pictured here and are outlined later on. I think this is a great strategy for any organization. And I think WARP7 might have a really interesting time in doing that by getting a visible face of someone as a partner to help you guys out. These are descriptions of the programs, and they include some feedback from attendees. What I'm going to do is put them in a package of, some of the granting information that I have for you guys as individuals, because believe it or not, outside of the team, there's all kinds of information that you can access for individual grants for yourself as a youth. And then here, this last page is an acknowledgement page, which is just basically what is known in the industry as a sponsor salad, because it's acknowledgements of everybody's partnered with the organization and how it makes them visible to the public really easily. I know there's probably a question or two, and I'd love to address it. Does anyone have anything you need from me? Who does the grant writing for WARP7? Let me ask that. Is it done in a group, or is there one person responsible for it? Or have you done grant writing at all in the past?
So as a team, we generally switch it up back and forth. I know Mahir has written grants personally to people. I know that as a team, we've written them together. We also like to set rookies to, make those endeavors on their own. So if they have an interest and they think they have someone who they want to be partnered with us, we say, take the initiative and do that yourself, and we'll just be there to be your guide. So it's really all across the board.
So it's important to understand that grants refers to public funding and funding from charitable foundations and things like that, versus sponsorship, which is when you're pitching a company like a Wealthsimple to come in and help you with what it is that you're doing. And the two are very different things. Everything that I've talked about in terms of the kind of capture of information that you need to have to present to these organizations refers both to sponsorship and also to grants. And it's important for you as an organization to have these documents together, because every year you turn over so much. Is there a drive where you keep everything on? And is there a place where you have all this information that you can update it? Yeah, okay, good. And do you share information across your sector? Do other teams share what they're doing with you guys?
I'd say as a whole, we're a team that is a mentor team. So we show other teams what we're doing. and we are generally an example. But I think it would be useful as a team to share more with everyone and create more of that community back and forth. And there's a question here from a member of the chat, and they say, can grants be only applied for money or for products and services as well?
Grants specifically are only about cash, money. Sponsorships can be in the form of partnerships where you get in-kind contributions and cash or technical equipment or anything that you need. Yeah, so you can apply for those from different private companies, but they're not called grants specifically.
So another question, in terms of your numbers, like you showed on the house slide deck, what time period do you use and do you have to disclose that?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So people game this all the time. And I think it's fair to say that depending on how it's contextualized in your deck, you could use anything from the previous year to the previous 10 years. And you could you could contextualize that one of two ways. You can actually be explicit with that on the page when you're doing your impressions, or you could say within the context of the document that you're doing an overview of the organization since inception. And in that way you can use those aggregate numbers, to really bulk them up. I have to say, I've seen numbers from people pitching the city at city council or pitching the province or pitching the feds, and they'll use millions. And especially in the last 10 years when people started to track impressions and they started to track things on social media and to see those numbers as impressive, right? So you usually, when I was young, only saw those in impressions pages from newspapers and other media outlets, and now you see them all the time, even in small organizations. Big numbers are good, but big numbers get unbelievable really fast too. So you have to be careful how you choose to do that. It's a great question.
And is there an ideal number of data points to demonstrate that sort of perspective?
There always is. And it always depends on who you're pitching. So sorry to be, all over the place, but specifically you want your socials, you want your participants, you want your audience or people who are physically present. And you also want the people who were partners with you. So that's four very specific things that you should always capture. And on top of that, if you're a public facing organization, people capture media sometimes as well. And media outside of socials, because everyone has socials, but media can be a completely different thing as well. So there's about those 5 different points that you want to really try and capture when you're doing those. As I said, I'm going to put together everything that I did and also some youth opportunity grants for you guys. And I'm going to circulate a resource document. So if you want it, you have it.
All right, I think that's going to be the conclusion of our presentation. We don't have any more questions from anyone, any of our participants. So thank you so much, Avril Helbig, for joining us. And thank you, Wealthsimple, for sponsoring this and putting this together with us. And thank you, WARP7, for putting the effort and time into this. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.